Part 1. Ma'am, you're already divorced. Ma'am, according to the court record, you're already divorced. Nia Carter stared at the banker across the polished walnut desk, waiting for him to smile, correct himself, say he had pulled up the wrong woman. He didn't. I'm sorry. Her voice came out quieter than she expected. Marcus Bell glanced at his monitor again. The dissolution was finalized 11 days ago. 11 days. Nia's left hand tightened around the cream-colored folder in her lap, and the diamond on her ring finger caught the morning light. She was still wearing her wedding ring. That was the detail that made the whole thing feel impossible. No, she said. My husband and I are separated. We're working through some things. We are not divorced. Marcus didn't argue. He simply turned the monitor a few inches toward her. There it was. Nia Carter. Luke Mercer. Dissolution of marriage. Final judgment entered 11 days earlier. Her stomach dropped. She read the line twice, then a third time, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less cruel. They didn't. Less than 24 hours ago, Luke had texted her from the downtown apartment where he said he needed space. Give me a little more time, and we'll figure us out. She had gone to bed believing him. And that morning, she had walked into the bank carrying a secret she thought might change both their lives. Her aunt's estate had finally cleared probate. The trust documents inside the folder confirmed that Nia was about to receive $31,247,806. She hadn't told Luke yet, not because she planned to hide it. She wanted to tell him in person. Part of her had even imagined ordering takeout from their favorite Thai place, sitting across from him at the kitchen table, and saying, maybe we finally get to breathe. She had been thinking about saving their marriage. Luke had apparently been busy ending it. Could this be a mistake? Nia asked. Marcus leaned back slightly. I don't want to speculate about a legal matter. But before we establish these accounts, your marital status has to match the documentation. Nia barely heard the rest. Her heartbeat felt strangely loud. She looked down at her wedding ring. 10 years reduced to one piece of jewelry that apparently meant something only to her. She didn't cry. Not there. Instead, she reached for her phone and opened Luke's message from the night before. Give me a little more time. Her thumb hovered over his name. She could call him, demand an explanation, let him hear exactly what he had done to her. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the court date glowing on Marcus's screen. Maybe it was the $31 million folder resting against her knees. Or maybe, for the first time in months, Nia understood that Luke knew something she didn't, and had been counting on keeping it that way. She locked her phone and slipped it back into her purse. Mr. Bell, she said, her voice steadier now. Please don't contact my husband about this inheritance. Marcus paused. Your ex-husband? Nia looked at the ring one last time. 11 days ago, Luke had apparently decided their marriage was over. Last night, he was still pretending it wasn't. And Nia was suddenly terrified to find out why. Part 2. The house that still looked married. The townhouse looked exactly the way Nia had left it that morning, and somehow that made everything worse. Luke's navy coat still hung beside hers near the front door. His favorite coffee mug sat upside down in the drying rack. A framed picture from their 7th anniversary in Savannah was still on the bookshelf, both of them smiling into the sun like people who had no idea how easily a marriage could disappear on paper. Nia set her purse on the kitchen counter and stood there for a moment, listening to the refrigerator hum. If Luke had wanted a divorce, why had he left his life scattered through the house as if he planned to come back? She walked upstairs and opened the small filing cabinet in their home office. Tax returns, mortgage statements, insurance policies. Everything appeared normal until she reached the bottom drawer. There had always been a gray folder there marked legal and property. It was gone. Nia checked again, slower this time. Nothing. Her pulse quickened, but she refused to call Luke. Not yet. She opened her laptop instead and searched her email for his name, then for divorce, court, petition, service. Buried inside an old account she rarely checked were several automated notices. Most had been filtered into spam. One listed an address on West Addison Street. Nia frowned. She had never lived there. By early afternoon, she was sitting across from Rachel Kim, a family law attorney recommended by the estate lawyer handling her aunt's trust. Rachel wore no expression of surprise as she studied the court docket. That worried Nia more than outrage would have. There is a case, Rachel finally said. Luke filed months ago. Nia stared at her. Months. Yes. He was living with me months ago. Rachel continued reading. There is also an affidavit stating that you were served. She slid a printed page across the desk. Nia saw her name, a date, and the West Addison address. I have never seen this. Do you recognize the address? No, Rachel tapped the paper once. Then we do not guess. We verify everything. Nia swallowed. Are you saying Luke forged something? I am saying we are not accusing anyone until we know exactly how this happened. That calm answer settled Nia more than reassurance could have. Rachel began building a timeline, asking where Nia had lived, when Luke moved out, what accounts they shared, and whether any unusual financial decisions had happened around the filing date. Nia almost said no. Then she remembered. 3 days after the date on the petition, Luke had come home unusually attentive. He made dinner, opened a bottle of wine, and told her they needed to restructure their finances before refinancing the townhouse. How much money? Rachel asked. About $48,000 from our joint savings. Where did it go? Luke moved it. He said it was temporary. Rachel's eyes lifted from the page. Do you have the transfer records? Nia nodded slowly. For the first time that day, she was not confused. She was remembering. Luke had not simply walked away from their marriage. He had been arranging his exit while asking her to trust him. Rachel turned her laptop around. Nia, look at the filing date. Nia did. Her throat tightened. It was the same week she had authorized Luke to move nearly every dollar they had saved together. And suddenly the missing folder at home did not feel missing at all. It felt removed. Part 3, 6 months of little lies. That night, Nia stopped asking herself when Luke had stopped loving her and started asking a harder question. How long had he been planning a life without her? She sat at the kitchen table with Rachel's timeline beside her laptop and began going backward through 6 months of ordinary moments that no longer felt ordinary. Luke had not changed overnight. That would have been easier to notice. It happened in inches. A client dinner that ran until midnight. A phone placed face down whenever Nia entered the room. A second charger disappearing from their bedroom. Then came the downtown apartment. Luke told her North Star Meridian Capital kept it available for senior employees working late during a major acquisition. Nia had believed him because marriage had trained her to treat trust as something you gave before someone earned it again. Then she remembered Sloan Avery. They had met at a North Star Meridian Capital fundraiser 4 months earlier. Sloan was polished, confident, and perfectly comfortable in a room full of investors. Luke introduced her as an investor relations consultant. Nia, this is Sloan. She has been helping us survive this quarter. Sloan smiled and shook Nia's hand. I have heard so much about you. At the time, Nia had laughed. Hopefully nothing embarrassing. Not at all, Sloan said. Then she glanced toward Luke. He talks about this next chapter all the time. Nia had assumed she meant his promotion. Sitting alone in the kitchen months later, she understood the sentence differently. She searched Luke's public professional posts, old event photographs, and messages he had sent while claiming to be working. Nothing by itself proved much. Together, the dates formed a pattern. Sloan appeared at dinners Luke had described as internal meetings. She was tagged at a charity event the same night Luke told Nia his flight from New York had been delayed. Then Nia found something more painful than a photograph. An old message from the wife of one of Luke's coworkers read, I am sorry you could not make it. Luke said you two had been separated for a while. Nia read it twice. The message was dated nearly 5 months earlier. 5 months ago, Luke had still been sleeping under the same roof, eating the dinners she made, discussing whether they should repaint the guest room. He had already begun telling other people their marriage was over. Her eyes moved toward the anniversary reservation confirmation still pinned beneath a magnet on the refrigerator. Luke had told her not to cancel it yet. Maybe we will need the weekend away, he had said. Nia stood, removed the reservation, and folded it once. Then she slipped off her wedding ring. She did not throw it into the sink. She did not smash a photograph or call Luke screaming. She placed the ring inside the same folder as the court records. For years, she had mistaken patience for loyalty and loyalty for responsibility. That ended tonight. Her phone rang just before 10. Rachel, I found something you need to understand, she said. The timing matters. Nia sat back down. What timing? Your divorce became final 11 days ago. According to the estate documents, your aunt's trust had not distributed anything to you at that point. Nia looked toward the cream-colored inheritance folder across the table. What does that mean? Rachel paused. It means when Luke finished divorcing you, you did not legally own that $31 million yet. Nia said nothing. As far as we can tell, Rachel continued. He walked away before he had any idea what was coming. And somehow, that hurt more than if he had known. Part 4. The money he walked away from. The next morning, Nia sat between Rachel Kim and the estate attorney with a number on the screen that still did not feel like it belonged to her. $31,247,806. I need you to tell me what Luke can touch, she said. The estate attorney, David Rosen, folded his hands over the trust agreement. Based on these documents, the distribution became legally available to you after the divorce judgment was entered. The trust was created by your aunt. The assets remained separate, and Luke was never a beneficiary. Nia leaned back. So he cannot suddenly decide he wants half because he finds out about it? He can decide anything he wants, Rachel said. That does not mean he gets it. For the first time in days, Nia almost smiled. Almost. Then David slid the final statement toward her, and the weight of the moment changed. $31 million should have felt like freedom. Instead, Nia thought about the years before it. She remembered paying part of Luke's business school tuition when his own savings ran short. She remembered turning down a promotion that required relocating to Atlanta because Luke had finally landed the opportunity he wanted in Chicago. She remembered sitting at their kitchen table with a calculator, moving grocery money around so they could make an extra payment on his student loans. None of those choices had made her rich. None had made her impressive to the people Luke wanted to impress. But they had helped build the life he later decided he had outgrown. Nia? Rachel's voice brought her back. You do not have to make every decision today. I know. Nia looked at the statement again. But I want to make the decisions that matter. By noon, she was back at the bank with Marcus Bell. She opened accounts in her name alone and requested that no information be released to Luke without proper legal authorization. She updated her emergency contact. She scheduled a meeting to review the beneficiaries on her new estate plan. Every signature felt different from the last. Not exciting. Deliberate. Marcus pushed one final form toward her. Anything else? Nia thought about Luke's coat hanging in the townhouse and the anniversary reservation she had finally taken off the refrigerator. Yes. If anyone calls asking about these assets, I want the request documented. Marcus nodded. Understood. Her phone buzzed inside her purse before she reached the elevator. Luke Mercer. She watched it ring until it stopped. 10 seconds later, a text appeared. Hey, can we talk tonight? She was still reading it when another message arrived. I heard there may have been some news about your aunt's estate. Nia went completely still. She had told Marcus. Rachel. David. Her sister knew the probate process was ending, but not the amount. Luke was not supposed to know anything yet. Then a third message appeared. I think we should talk about what this means for us. Us. 11 days after secretly becoming her ex-husband, Luke had suddenly remembered the word us. Nia typed nothing. The elevator doors opened, but she did not step inside. Her phone rang again. This time she answered. Nia. Luke sounded warm, almost relieved. Thank God. I have been trying to reach you. You reached me. A pause. Can I come by? She looked through the bank's glass doors at the afternoon traffic moving along the street. Why? Because we are still family. Nia's expression hardened. Luke had chosen the wrong word. Come at 7, she said. We need to talk. Good. I knew you would understand. Nia ended the call before he could say anything else. Luke thought he was coming home to discuss $31 million. What he did not know was that Nia had already seen the court record, found the false address, traced the missing savings, and taken off her ring. At 7 o'clock, Luke was going to walk into the townhouse expecting the wife he had kept in the dark. That woman would not be waiting for him. Part 5. We are still family. At exactly 7, Luke let himself into the townhouse with the key he still carried. Nia, he called, almost casually, as if he were coming home from work. She was sitting at the kitchen table. No dinner. No wine. Just 2 chairs and the gray legal folder Rachel had helped her rebuild. Luke walked in wearing the charcoal coat Nia had bought him for his 36th birthday. He gave her a careful smile. You look tired. Sit down. His smile faded slightly, but he pulled out the chair across from her. I know things have been rough. I have been thinking a lot about us. Nia studied him. When did you find out about my aunt's estate? Luke blinked. That is what you want to start with. It is a simple question. He loosened his tie. Someone at work heard there was a large estate being settled. Your family name came up. How much did you hear? Enough to know we should talk before you make any big decisions. There it was again. We. Nia placed both hands on the table. Did you know I was divorced when you texted me 2 nights ago and said we would figure us out? Luke's face changed. Not dramatically, just enough. His eyes moved toward the folder. Nia, listen. Yes or no? The paperwork moved faster than I expected. She stared at him. That is your answer? I was going to explain. You had 11 days. Luke exhaled and leaned forward. Things between us were falling apart. We both knew that. I knew we were separated. I did not know I was divorced. It was complicated. Nia opened the folder and slid a copy of the court record across the table. Is the address on that affidavit complicated too? Luke looked down. For the first time, he had nothing ready. Nia saw it, and something inside her settled. How much? He asked finally. She almost laughed at the speed of it. How much what? The inheritance. $31,247,806. Luke stopped moving. For several seconds, the only sound in the room was the furnace clicking on. Then his voice softened. Nia, that changes things. Why? Because we built a life together. You ended that life. I made a decision when I thought we were done. You were done. You just forgot to tell me. Luke pushed the court paper aside. Do not turn this into something ugly. I supported you too. We both sacrificed. We are still family, whether a judge signed a piece of paper or not. Nia looked at him and finally understood what had been bothering her since the bank. Luke had not rushed over because he regretted lying. He had rushed over because the woman he had quietly discarded had become financially unreachable. You cannot just walk away with $31 million, he said. Nia held his gaze. Luke, you already made sure I walked away. His jaw tightened. So that is it. You tell me. Apparently you already did. Luke stood, grabbed his coat, and headed for the door. Before leaving, he turned back. You should talk to someone before you assume that money has nothing to do with me. I already have. That stopped him for half a second. Then he left. Nia remained at the table, listening as his car pulled away. She did not know that Luke made another call before he reached the end of the block. It is me, he told his attorney. I want to know if we can reopen the divorce. The answer would arrive in Rachel Kim's office the next morning. Luke had wanted out when he believed Nia had nothing. Now he wanted back into the paperwork, and in doing so, he was about to put every financial decision he had made under a microscope. Part 6. He wanted the divorce until it cost him. At 9:14 the next morning, Rachel called Nia with 4 words that told her Luke had learned nothing. He wants it reopened. Nia stood beside the copier at work, surrounded by grant applications and housing reports, while people moved through the nonprofit office carrying coffee and complaining about the Chicago cold. The normalcy of it almost made her laugh. On what grounds? She asked. His attorney claims there may have been procedural irregularities. They are also suggesting you and Luke were actively discussing reconciliation when the judgment became final. Nia stepped into an empty conference room and closed the door. He secretly divorced me, and now he is arguing that we were still married? Essentially, because he heard about the money. Rachel paused. That is what the timing suggests. But we do not need to argue about his motives. We use documents. That afternoon, Nia brought Rachel months of text messages, bank statements, calendar entries, and emails. Luke had been careful, but he had also been arrogant. He assumed nobody would ever compare his different versions of the truth. On March 8th, he texted Nia, I still love you. I just need time. On March 9th, his attorney submitted paperwork pushing the divorce forward. On March 15th, Luke told Nia they should keep their anniversary reservation. 2 days later, according to a photograph from a North Star Meridian Capital dinner, Sloane Avery was sitting beside him with his hand resting comfortably behind her chair. Then Rachel found the transfer. Here, she said. $48,000 had left the joint savings account after Nia approved what Luke described as a temporary mortgage restructuring. $20,000 eventually went toward legitimate household obligations. The rest moved through another account before $22,000 became a deposit connected to the downtown apartment Luke claimed his company provided. Nia stared at the statement. I helped pay for the place he moved into. It appears marital funds were used toward it, Rachel said carefully. Nia did not feel heartbreak this time. She felt insulted by how confidently Luke had expected her never to check. Request everything, she said. Every statement we are legally entitled to. Rachel nodded. If he wants to reopen financial issues, discovery works both ways. That sentence changed the room. Luke wanted the court looking at Nia's inheritance. He had apparently forgotten that courts could also look backward. Over the next week, Nia returned to her routine. She went to work. She finally told her older sister, Tasha, the whole story over Sunday breakfast. Tasha listened without interrupting, then asked, "Why did you protect him for so long?" Nia looked into her coffee. "Because admitting what he was doing felt like admitting I had wasted 10 years. Tasha reached across the table. "Those years were yours too. He does not get to own them just because he lied during some of them." Nia carried that sentence with her Monday morning. By then, Rachel had another surprise. "Luke's employer contacted his attorney," she said. "Why would North Star care about our divorce?" Compliance. Rachel forwarded the notice. Luke's legal challenge had forced new financial disclosures, and something in those disclosures did not match information previously provided to North Star Meridian Capital. Nia read the message slowly. She had never called Luke's company. She had never threatened his career. She had not needed to. Luke had reopened the door himself. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we find out what he told them." Rachel opened another document. "And Nia, there is one more thing. They have requested records concerning that downtown apartment." Nia went still. The apartment Luke said belonged to the company was now being questioned by the company itself. Luke had gone looking for a path into her $31 million. Instead, he had just pointed everyone toward the one part of his story that had never made sense. Part 7. The paper trail. Luke walked into the settlement conference believing the conversation would be about Nia's money. 20 minutes later, nobody at the table was talking about her inheritance. Rachel Kim sat beside Nia with a legal pad and 3 organized folders. Across from them, Luke leaned toward his attorney, Charles Grant, whispering something under his breath. He looked tired, but still carried himself like a man expecting the room to eventually agree with him. Charles began carefully. "My client maintains that the parties continued discussing reconciliation after the petition was filed. Given the unusual circumstances surrounding the judgment and the subsequent financial developments, we believe reopening certain matters is appropriate." Rachel nodded. "Then we should review the full timeline." She placed the first document on the table. March 8th. Luke's text to Nia, "I still love you. I just need time." The second document landed beside it. March 9th. His attorney had requested that the divorce proceed. Then came the West Addison service affidavit, the anniversary reservation, the joint savings transfer, the lease documents for the downtown apartment. Luke shifted in his chair. "What does the apartment have to do with her inheritance?" Rachel looked directly at him. "Nothing. Your legal challenge is what made it relevant." Charles quietly reached for the lease. Rachel continued. "Mr. Mercer represented to Nia that North Star Meridian Capital provided this apartment for business purposes. North Star has now confirmed it did not." Nia watched Luke's expression tighten. "I never said they owned it," he replied. "You told me the company kept it for senior employees," Nia said. Luke turned toward her. "That is not the same thing. It was when you needed me not to ask questions." Charles raised a hand. "Let us stay focused." Rachel was already opening another folder. "Absolutely. $22,000 in marital funds appears to have been used toward the apartment. If Mr. Mercer wants financial matters reopened, we will request a complete accounting of those funds, along with any other disclosures relevant to the original settlement." Luke looked at his attorney. This time, Charles did not immediately speak. The silence lasted just long enough for Nia to recognize something she had not seen in Luke before. Uncertainty. Rachel pushed one final page across the table. It showed the date Nia's trust distribution became legally available, 11 days after the divorce judgment. "The inheritance did not belong to Nia during the marriage," Rachel said. "Your client completed the divorce before she received it." Luke leaned back. "We were married for 10 years. I contributed to that life." Nia finally spoke. "So did I." He looked at her. "That is not what I meant. I know exactly what you meant." And that was the strangest part. For months, Nia had wondered whether Luke left because she had failed him somehow. The timeline gave her a cleaner truth. Luke had walked away believing there was nothing left for him to gain. He had not known about the trust. He had not known $31 million was coming. He simply believed the woman who helped pay for his education, moved her career around his ambitions, and trusted him with their savings had become disposable. Charles asked for a private break with Luke. 10 minutes later, They returned. His tone had changed. My client is prepared to discuss withdrawing the challenge, provided the remaining marital accounting can be resolved. Luke stared at the table as Charles spoke. The man who had controlled every piece of paperwork was now trying to keep that paperwork from going any further. Nia did not smile. She did not need to. Outside the conference room, Rachel touched her arm. You understand what just happened? He backed down. He had to. Rachel closed her folder. If he keeps digging into your finances, we keep digging into his. Nia's phone buzzed before they reached the elevator. It was an email from her executive director at the nonprofit. The subject line read, Carter Community Housing Fund. Nia opened it and stopped walking. The board had approved her proposal. $8 million from her trust would anchor the largest affordable housing initiative the organization had ever attempted. The public announcement would be made at Chicago's civic fundraising event the following month, in front of donors, city leaders, and executives from several major financial firms. Nia scanned the sponsor list. Halfway down the page was a familiar name, North Star Meridian Capital. Luke had spent years trying to enter rooms where people like him controlled the money. Next month, he would walk into one of those rooms and discover that Nia was no longer standing outside it. Part 8. The room he always wanted. Luke saw Nia's name before he saw her. It appeared 20 feet wide on the screen behind the stage at the Chicago Civic Partnership dinner. Carter Community Housing Fund. Founding commitment. $8 million. For a second, he simply stood there holding a glass of sparkling water while conversations moved around him. North Star Meridian Capital had purchased 2 tables near the front, and Luke had spent most of the evening doing what he always did at these events, remembering names, shaking hands, making sure the right people noticed him. Then the lights dimmed. Tonight, the executive director announced, we are able to move forward with more than 600 affordable housing units across Chicago because one woman decided an inheritance should do more than change her own address. Applause filled the ballroom. Nia walked onto the stage. She wore a simple dark green dress, the kind she might have chosen before the money, and that detail bothered Luke more than diamonds would have. She had not transformed into someone else. She had simply stopped organizing herself around him. Nia looked across the room and began. My aunt believed money should solve real problems. So do I. Her voice was steady. $8 million will not fix housing in Chicago, but it can keep hundreds of families from having to choose between rent, groceries, and starting over somewhere they never wanted to leave. Luke watched executives who barely returned his calls stand and applaud her. But Nia was not looking at them for approval. She was talking about the work she had already been doing for years. That was when Luke finally understood the part he had missed. The money had not given Nia a purpose. It had given her purpose room to move. After the program, he found her near a quiet hallway outside the ballroom. Nia. She turned. Luke stopped a few feet away. You were good up there. Thank you. I mean it. He glanced back toward the ballroom. $8 million. That is a serious commitment. It is. He seemed to search for the version of her who would fill the silence for him. She did not. I made the biggest mistake of my life, he finally said. Nia met his eyes. I know. The answer landed harder than anger. That is all you have to say? What do you want me to say, Luke? I do not know. Something. 10 years should mean something. They did. Did. His voice dropped. Was any of it real to you? Nia almost answered, but someone behind Luke spoke first. Interesting question. Sloane Avery stood at the end of the hallway. She was holding her coat and staring at Luke, not Nia. Luke's face changed immediately. Sloane, this is not the time. Actually, I think it is. She walked closer. You told me you were completely done with her before we ever got serious. Then the minute you heard about the inheritance, you started calling your attorney about getting back into the divorce. Luke looked around. Keep your voice down. Sloane gave a short, humorless laugh. That is always your solution, is it not? Keep everyone quiet long enough to tell each person a different story. Nia said nothing. She did not need Sloane to defend her, and she was not interested in competing with her. Sloane looked at Nia. For what it is worth, I did not know he was still telling you there was a marriage to save. Then she turned back to Luke. And I am done being the next person you rewrite the truth for. She walked away before Luke could answer. He stood there, stripped of the explanations he had used on both women. Nia reached for her coat. You asked whether our marriage was real to me, she said. It was. That is why what you did mattered. Luke looked at her, suddenly hopeful. But Nia continued. Something being real once does not mean I have to keep living inside it forever. She walked toward the lobby, leaving him alone in the hallway. The next morning, Rachel called with confirmation that Luke had formally withdrawn his challenge. The divorce would stand. The remaining marital accounting would be settled separately, and Sloan was gone from his life. But Nia still had one piece of unfinished business. Marcus Bell had called too. Her final private banking documents were ready for signature. The same bank where she had discovered her marriage was already over was waiting for her to return. Only this time nobody else would be defining her status for her. Part 9. Her name alone. 3 weeks later, Nia returned to the same bank where her old life had ended in a sentence. Marcus Bell greeted her in the lobby and led her back to his office. The walnut desk was the same. The view of downtown Chicago was the same. But Nia was not carrying a wedding ring or wondering what Luke might think about the decisions she made. Marcus placed the final documents in front of her. The trust assets have been transferred according to your instructions. Your estate plan has been updated. The housing commitment is funded, and the remaining investment accounts are established. Nia looked at the signature line. Nia Carter. Nothing beside it. No spouse. No Luke Mercer. Just her name. You all right? Marcus asked. Nia smiled faintly. I think I finally am. She signed. There was no rush of triumph. No music in her head. No feeling that $31 million had somehow repaired what happened. Money could pay for attorneys. It could protect her future. It could put roofs over families who needed them. But it could not return the mornings she spent believing Luke was working late when he was building another life. It could not give back the opportunities she declined or make 10 years feel smaller. And Nia no longer needed it to. Rachel called later that afternoon. Luke had signed the final accounting agreement. The disputed marital funds would be resolved, his challenge was gone, and there would be no claim against the trust. So that is it? Nia asked. Legally, yes. Rachel paused. How does that feel? Nia looked through the window of her office at a family meeting with one of the nonprofit's housing counselors. Quiet. Rachel laughed softly. Quiet can be good. I am starting to learn that. Luke sent one final message that evening. I am sorry I understood what you meant to me too late. Nia read it once. Months earlier, those words might have kept her awake all night. Now she understood something Luke still did not. His greatest mistake was not divorcing a woman who would inherit millions. His greatest mistake was believing her value depended on what she could bring into a bank account. Nia had been valuable when she helped him through business school. She had been valuable when she rearranged her career so his could grow. She had been valuable sitting at a kitchen table paying bills, working at a nonprofit, loving a man who had started treating devotion like something guaranteed. The inheritance had not made her worthy. It had only made his blindness expensive. Nia did not answer the message. She did not need the last word to have closure. A year later, the first building supported by the Carter Community Housing Fund opened on Chicago's South Side. Families carried boxes through freshly painted doors. Children argued over bedrooms. An older woman stood in her new kitchen and cried because, for the first time in years, she knew exactly what her rent would be next month. Nia watched from the sidewalk beside Tasha. $31 million, Tasha said. Did you ever imagine this is where it would take you? Nia watched a little girl tape a handmade sign to an apartment door. Home. No, she said. I thought it was going to change my life. Tasha looked at her. It did. Nia shook her head gently. It gave me choices. That is different. She finally understood the difference. Luke had spent years chasing rooms where powerful people decided what everyone else was worth. Nia had spent those same years believing love required her to prove her worth to one man. They had both been wrong. Some betrayals do not destroy your life. They destroy the version of your life that required you to stay small. And sometimes the person who walks away from you is not taking your future with them. They are simply making room for you to finally see it.